Hello, and welcome to New Best Practices for Maintenance. Happy to be here this morning. We have great attendance. We had over 250 people registered, and I see our attendee list is climbing. So thanks for joining us this morning for a very timely and interesting topic. First and foremost, starting out, I just want to thank our generous sponsors for sponsoring today's webinar: Arvig Multiwave, Cozen O'Connor, Elliott's Painting and Decorating. And we are able to offer these webinars free for members and non-members, and able to put them up on our YouTube channel because of the generous donations of our sponsors. So thank you very much to these three companies. A few tips for the best webinar experience. Number one, you need a good signal. An Ethernet connection is always fine, but in this day and age, Wi-Fi works great. To help the quality of your program and the quality of the webinar, we suggest closing all programs except for the webinar software at this time. Any sort of browsing the web, social media, even your email can interfere with the quality of the webinar, both sound quality and visual quality. So we suggest closing all other programs, and that will usually help with the bandwidth if you're having the bandwidth issue. 99% of all problems viewing or listening to the webinar are resolved by logging out and logging back in. So we suggest quickly getting out and then coming back into the webinar using your registration link. Should only take 1 or 2 minutes at most. Attendees will be in listen-only mode and will remain muted throughout the webinar this morning. If you do have questions, please type them into the question section on your control panel. You can do that throughout, or you can do that at the end, and I'll be moderating with questions at the end of our session today. If you're having issues with sound, we suggest opening up that audio panel on your controls. Typically, you can select where your speakers are coming from and where your microphone is being picked up from, and that generally can help with your inability to hear the webinar. If for some reason you can't hear at all, please click the phone call button there at the top. You see that orange arrow is pointing right there, and that will give you the dial-in information. You can call in to the webinar and watch the webinar on your computer. So there's always a couple options there regarding audio. If you have any static or clicking sounds, please move handheld devices. Typically your cell phone is the biggest culprit for this one, away from your mic and your speakers, and that usually will help with any of those issues. If you do have poor or choppy audio quality, usually that has to do with the speed or the bandwidth of your Wi-Fi or internet. If you continue having problems with that after closing all programs, you can always use that use telephone in the audio pane call in. That usually has a great audio quality, and then you can view the slides and any presentation materials and our lovely speakers' faces on your computer. Quickly, so everyone knows, the date of this webinar is May 27th of 2020. We want to make sure that that gets announced because we are going to be putting this webinar up on our YouTube channel. It will be made public via MHA's YouTube channel, so you can take a look at that. You can view it again, or you can send it to all your friends if you enjoyed the webinar today, and encourage them to take a look. MHA stresses that this webinar is not to be construed as legal or operational guidance. Instead, it is meant to be a starting point for your company-specific plan. We encourage firms to seek expert consultation in the development of their plans to ensure comprehensive coverage. Also, because the situation is evolving rapidly, the information in this document, in this webinar, is the best available resources at the time of publication. The views that will be expressed in the webinar are attributed to the individuals expressing them and do not necessarily represent the views of MHA, its members, board of directors, staff, or sponsors and participating companies. Now to our panel. I'm happy to introduce our panel here. First up, Michael Eden. Michael is a maintenance supervisor for Dominium and has been at Dominium for over 5 years. He is a certified residential maintenance technician and MHA certification, CRMT, EPA universal technician, special class boiler engineer, certified pool operator, digital maintenance guru, and 2016 Maddox Award recipient. Ryan Comer. Ryan is the president and CEO of Renovation Systems. He co-founded the company in 1996 and has provided services to the multifamily industry for over 24 years. Ryan also founded and owns Cutting Edge Property Maintenance, a commercial snow and grounds maintenance company. And Ryan has been an active member of MHA for the last 14 years. And last but not least, Jeremy Malchow, who's filling in this morning for Jim. Jeremy Malchow is the manager of purchasing for IRET. At IRET, Jeremy manages purchasing of maintenance, repair, and operations materials and vendors for 14,000 units in 7 states. He is Sergeant First Class for the United States Army Reserve, specializing in chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear operations, and is a hazardous materials technician. Very interesting. And at this point, I am going to turn it over to Jeremy.
Good morning, everybody. I hope today finds you well. Today, we are going to talk about IRET's experience, and specifically my experience as a purchasing manager for IRET in lessons learned with the current COVID-19 epidemic. Hello. I apologize for not turning my webcam on. I think we can go to the next slide, please.
Jeremy, you should have control. I'll get out of it, so hopefully you can get it. Let's see. Try now. There you go.
Okay. In a quick overview, the lessons learned at IRET. 60 days of keeping teams and customers safe. Some of the silver linings, some of the things that we had to do, that we learned to do, that will maintain. And then moving forward, we never close, but we will loosen restrictions as we are legally able. Lessons learned. How to manage routine service requests when not completed, how to forecast expected uncompleted service and maintenance requests, and how to maintain the inventory of personal protective equipment. I'll start with the first bullet point. It was difficult to look at service requests or work orders starting to back up. Every week we would run a report to see approximately how many work orders we had open, and we were basically trending at about 40% to 50% of open, not completed work orders. And what we struggled with was, how do we take this information and try to lower the amount of open work orders and give our residents the best positive service? One of the things that we did was we started to integrate GoToMeetings, FaceTime, all sorts of conference type programs to see if we could, in effect, have our residents change or fix some of the things that were in their units. Generally, when we did these things, we weren't dealing with very technical issues. Things as simple as, I need a light bulb replaced in my refrigerator. My smoke detector is beeping. My filter needs to be changed in my HVAC. And what we would do is we would contact the resident and find a platform that we could communicate with them and set up a time for when we could drop off materials and then assist them basically on the other side of the door to accomplish many of these tasks. And the reduction in the open work orders by doing that was about 15%. So in effect, we cut our open work orders from approximately 40% to about 25%, which was, I think, very good for us because it kept that looming crest of work orders from rising. And it also told our residents that we are interested in helping you have these items taken care of. We understand that you too are sheltering in place and you certainly don't want to look at that burnt out light bulb every time you go to the refrigerator. Following that, we did realize that, yes, we were able to accomplish 15% of these work orders by, in effect, telecommuting. But what do we do with the preventative maintenance items and the other work orders? All of those costs will aggregate. We did put a slight hold on spending as there was no reason to buy materials for things that we couldn't complete. But what we didn't want to do was lose that information. So what we did was we basically changed the status of our work orders from being in progress to being rescheduled or temporarily fixed. That way we could manage the uncompleted workload. And now when restrictions are starting to be lifted, we have a fairly good idea of what that uncompleted service and preventative maintenance will cost, as we're able to create itemized lists by community of materials needed. And we worked in coordination with Home Depot Supply and Home Depot Pro, formerly known as Wilmar, to create rapid order forms for these uncompleted service request materials. And at that time, we centralized those forms. And they were much like a Google Doc, where they were on a shared drive and people could add and subtract. And it allowed our principals to understand that while we didn't spend much on maintenance materials and activities in Q1, we had a fairly good idea of what the cost is going to be for Q2 and subsequent quarters. And that's important for IRET as it's a publicly traded company. We need to let our board members and shareholders know what our anticipated costs are and how they may deviate from previous years. And finally, I think the question that many people have right now is how to maintain an inventory of personal protective equipment, and additionally, what personal protective equipment should I maintain an inventory of? This is difficult, ongoing, it's difficult. Personal protective equipment is one of those things that shows your employees and your residents that you're actively engaged in maintaining their health and safety. And it's part of how you maintain a strong team and a positive customer base. When COVID-19 started to go in, we'll say March timeframe, we really did order about as much as we could get. And we were very proactive about it. And our thought process was, we don't know how big this is going to get. There are rumors of shortages. We should get in line with everybody else. And what we did was we basically ordered through multiple vendors all of the items that we could order, with the thought of we will either stockpile them for later use or we will return the order when the COVID-19 incident subsides. Well, we weren't the only people doing that, and I can understand that everybody else was doing that too. So we really had to think outside of the box for certain types of products. We developed relationships with local distillers in each of our markets to produce hand sanitizer. Certainly, we purchased and also encouraged our residents and our community staffs to make or obtain cloth masks. And I really do feel that the CDC guidance on the cloth masks was somewhat ambiguous. However, it provided a fair amount of protection, and what it did was basically release inventory back into the pipeline for our governmental and healthcare workers, but also lessen the burden on our suppliers. It in effect made more supplies available to everybody else. However, your experience may vary. The silver lining. So as I discussed, the virtual service, we had really no idea initially how to affect virtual service. And we really didn't know how widespread it would be. The more we used it, the more we found that despite social distancing, word got around the communities that if you call the office of your respective community, you can set up a date to get some of these things taken care of. And I think part of that was there's a social aspect that you're able to reach out to somebody and in effect solve your own problem, which makes many people feel good. Some people certainly got to learn new skills, and we were able to provide a heightened level of customer service. Additionally, we created service how-to videos. And these videos were for many of the routine and less technical items, such as how to plunge your toilet, how to use a zip-it hair removal tool, how to reset your breaker, how to reset your GFI, how to know how to reset your garbage disposal. These were hosted on our intranet and made available to our residents. And once again, we're quite surprised how self-motivated and how many people we were actually able to reach with these different types of multimedia approaches to solving fairly mundane problems. In the end, a service request is a service request, and as many as we could accomplish made us feel better. And I'm certainly believing in the fact that it made our customers feel better. The other and last is disinfection. So just to start, disinfection and sanitization are in fact two different things. Sanitization is where you will kill a vast majority of organisms very quickly. Think of hand sanitizer. You put it on your hands, you rub it in, you're in and you're out, and you're done. And it will kill 99.99% of those microbes on your hands. Disinfection, on the other hand, takes a little bit longer time. So you may sanitize when you're going through a door, but if you're disinfecting a surface, you'll use a different chemical, which is made to kill every single organism. However, it takes a longer contact time. So we primarily use two different types of chemicals. We use a hand sanitizer, which is 70% or more isopropyl alcohol, and the gel forms are very difficult to find. So we use spray bottles and wipes for quick sanitization of commonly touched areas. And the disinfection is for our vacant units in between showings. So we've metered out how often we can show our vacant units to no sooner than 30 minutes in between. We spray hard surfaces and frequently touched areas and give the solution, which is called quaternary ammonia, 20 minutes to dry on the surface. That quaternary ammonia does not need to be wiped off and is very good if sprayed in a very fine mist, does not leave any residue or discolor any of the hard surfaces. Moving forward. So completing deferred service work. We at IRET are aggregating all of our service work that we weren't able to complete, both resident and routine maintenance. And what we are currently doing now is we have a very good idea of the magnitude of how many things are outstanding, and we will start to procure the materials to fix these things, notify our residents, and then we are going to take a look through every unit that we have. We will start at building 1, unit 1, and go through and fix everything that we can possibly fix in an organized unit sweep. This allows us to be efficient on a lot of different levels, and it allows us to see the condition of our units. In many of these units, there might be latent moisture intrusion. Certainly the furnace filters probably got missed as they're outside of their normal preventative maintenance, and other resident lifestyle choices will be addressed. This certainly allows us to gain efficiency by loading all these materials on one cart and dedicate labor to do all of these things. Service in these occupied homes, when we get there, generally the best idea is that the residents are not at home, and if they're at work, that would be ideal. However, in many instances, residents are still sheltering in place. Our real big ask of the resident is, please go wait in another area of your home while we complete the work orders that you've called in and the preventative maintenance service. Some other things that we're going to be doing is replacing aerators and toilet flappers to try and gain on water efficiency. Our personal protective posture for going into these occupied homes is minimally just a mask, and depending on the type of work, nitrile gloves or rubber gloves. If a resident is self-reported that they're sheltering in place because they have the symptoms or think that they're ill, we'll basically let them know that if your work order is not an emergency in nature, then we're just going to give you the time you need to self-quarantine. You let us know when you feel better, and then we'll come in. Finally, moving forward and opening amenities. Opening amenities is largely going to be based upon the CDC and the state of Minnesota directives. As such, pools, fitness, and clubroom and other indoor spaces are under the phase 3/phase 4 kind of opening schedule. So until we are notified by the state that we can open these things, we're generally not. What we are doing in preparation is finding methods to maintain social distancing in these areas, either by using a calculator or changing our maximum capacities. We've created some nice 11x7 signs that go into snap frames around these areas, and they will in essence state what the maximum capacity is and how that's going to be metered. And some ideas that we're having is limiting guests to certain time periods. We haven't got to the point where we're setting appointments for people to use things. I think that we're going to let the demand and the CDC Minnesota guidance kind of dictate what's the correct usage for all of these things. Currently, our playgrounds, barbecues, and other outdoor spaces are open as per CDC in the state of Minnesota. We do sanitize these periodically, but generally not more than twice a day. And we have made it incumbent upon the users of these spaces to maintain their social distancing and sanitize themselves. For many of these areas, they're generally unsupervised areas, and we don't want to provide a lot of sanitization and towels and wipes and things, because generally they get used up faster, they disappear, or the resultant refuse ends up in areas that they end up on our grounds, and we don't want to spend more time cleaning up grounds. And the best uses for those limited resources will be in these other common areas. So as I stated earlier, completing the deferred work, we'll be starting our 100% unit sweep in mid-June. And the idea is close open service requests, perform routine maintenance, checks for leaks and latent moisture signs, complete any unreported items, and use a very systematic approach. It's really just a big sweep. We'll get eyes on the majority of our units and have an ability to interact with our residents. And it really does let us consolidate resources and clinically accomplish as many tasks as possible. As I stated before, the working in occupied units are personal protective posture, masks, and gloves. We will don and doff, which means to place on and take off in the unit to prevent contamination or spread. We'll ask the residents to go into another room, typically a bedroom, away from our employees while we perform service. As I stated before, opening amenities, as far as jurisdictions allow. We did start up our pools in a normal startup fashion, and really that's more of a preventative maintenance for the pool equipment. So we clean them and we're maintaining the chemicals in them. However, we're just not allowing anybody to go into and use those pools until we have authorization from CDC. If there aren't any questions, I will be followed by Michael Eden.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate all the info. As Aubrey stated earlier, my name is Michael Eden. I'm a multi-site maintenance supervisor with Dominium. Today, I'm going to be going over some of the ways that COVID-19 pandemic has impacted not only our company, but I'll touch base on a lot of the changes that I've seen from other organizations as well. Let's see if I have. Aubrey, could you give me control? There we go. Slight delay. Give you a brief overview. I'll be touching on what we've learned, some of the silver linings, in other words, what ways we've changed in response to the situation, what kinds of lasting changes that we may see in our industry, as well as some of the approaches to reopening and getting back to our new normal. What we've learned, first and foremost, the importance of personal protective equipment. PPE is something that has a heavy presence in our industry. Maintenance technicians and supervisors deal with it on a daily basis, even pre-COVID. It's been shown, to be something of even greater importance now than we probably would have even expected. Given that there's been so much recent attention to PPE, I think it's important to highlight how vital it is to have good practices with PPE, ensuring that your staff is properly utilizing PPE to avoid exposure and cross-contamination. Sourcing PPE has been difficult for many companies during this time, even with inventory starting to come back to normal in some areas. Other areas, people are still having a hard time finding PPE that they need for their staff. My best piece of advice with this, if you're struggling to source PPE at this time, is to get on the phone with your suppliers. Find out what inventory levels they have of what different types of PPE. Be flexible with your purchasing. You know, you don't need name brand gloves and masks if other off-brand options are available. And if your regular suppliers don't have the inventory that you need, be willing to try unorthodox suppliers. Service vendors, you know, mom and pop shops, stores, paint suppliers sell masks and gloves. You have to be willing to kind of work outside the box. And I know Jeremy touched base on this, you know, a lot of distilleries have shifted some of their production over to hand sanitizers. So reach out to companies like that if you guys are struggling to source PPE, sanitizers, disinfectants, that kind of thing. Let's see here. Let me skip forward. Oops. Maintenance callbacks, I want to touch base on this. Reducing your maintenance callbacks. At this time when you're trying to take extra precautions to limit direct person-to-person contact, make sure that your staff is taking the time to fix things correctly the first time, because it not only limits your contact, but it is providing better customer service at a time when a lot of people are under stress. You know, so fixing a washing machine or a microwave or, you know, an outlet that's not working the first time around is just generally a less stressful kind of practice for not only your staff, but your residents as well. You know, looking at preventative maintenance, this is kind of an afterthought, but, you know, while at this time we're suspending a lot of preventative maintenance to limit contact and that cross-contamination when going unit to unit, you have to consider that your preventative maintenance practices in the past have a heavy hand in reducing your contact with residents today. You know, sites with good preventive maintenance programs are less at risk right now because they're seeing reduced number of work orders and fewer service calls. So they've already kind of mitigated a lot of their contact with residents at this time. For maintenance prioritization, we've had a big shift in our approach to daily maintenance needs. We've put non-emergency service requests kind of on the back burner so that we can prioritize cleaning, sanitizing efforts in our common spaces while we still address emergency maintenance requests. We have also expanded our definitions of what constitutes a maintenance emergency during this time. We added in things like cooking appliances at a time when restaurants are unable to serve people inside their facilities, and many locations aren't offering delivery, carry out, or some are even closed altogether. We're also trying to take advantage of seeing reduced numbers of service requests by addressing a lot of deferred maintenance in our unoccupied areas, especially in our closed amenity spaces. Not only will this allow us to reopen back to normal with ease when it's deemed appropriate to do so, but it will help us reduce future demands on our maintenance staff when we start to see an uptick in service requests. For our in-unit service requests, we are questioning residents on any recent illnesses, any flu-like symptoms, cough, fever, etc., or if they know of any exposure to someone who has been ill or someone who's known to have been exposed to COVID. We're using this to determine whether it's appropriate for our staff to enter units. For those units where there is no evidence of illness, we are entering homes to address service requests, and we're simply asking those residents either to stay in a different area of their home, maintain 6 feet social distancing, or to leave their home completely until the service request is completed. You know, for both emergency and non-emergency service requests, We are having our staff wear masks, booties, and fresh gloves every time they enter a unit, and they're disposing of any disposable PPE as soon as they exit the home. More on what we've learned with resident communication. Our company has already had tools in place for some time to allow residents use of their preferred communication methods, either in person, down at the office, for facilities that have on-site offices, through telephone, email, and then online submissions for service requests. Now more than ever, we've seen what a great tool that these can be. Having office doors closed presents a bit of a challenge to operating, on a normal kind of basis, but these tools have allowed us to keep things as close to normal as possible. We haven't specifically done any of these, but I have seen a lot of other companies start producing resident service videos. These are short 1 to 2 minute long videos that teach residents how to troubleshoot maintenance issues and how to perform their own simple repairs. I've seen some companies that have been delivering hand tools and parts to resident doors when these service requests come in to allow residents to complete the repairs themselves. For those sites with younger demographics that commonly lose long-term residents to home ownership, this is an additional service that you can provide to your residents that prepares them for home ownership and those additional responsibilities that come with owning a home. But it also can help limit future service calls by having a better educated resident pool. I also think it's important to note that we have seen a wide spectrum of resident responses to this situation. Many, for the most part, what we've seen is residents sheltering in place, avoiding contact with neighbors and staff members, while we have seen others that aren't being so diligent about observing these practices. And even a handful that are upset at the closing of amenity spaces and common areas. I think it's important to bring up this fact because these are the types of situations where it can be valuable to have written policies and practices in place so that you're acting in the best interest of your community as a whole. So, silver linings, in what ways have we changed? We've seen that this has had the biggest impact on everyone's willingness. What I've seen has had the biggest impact for me is everyone's willingness to be flexible and respond quickly to change during this unprecedented time. From corporate offices that have created response teams to review ever-changing information and affect policy changes on the fly, all the way down to site staff that is quickly changing their daily duties and routines to reflect that same information. I have seen several companies shift additional focus on their staff well-being during this time, not only towards physical health, but also mental health. I've seen increases through several organizations on their availability of PTO time, additional resources being shifted towards allowing staff accommodations, for example, time off for family care, additional resources towards education, and increases in recognition of staff efforts. I feel like these are all valuable efforts, especially to see from companies with more of a corporate structure. It's valuable, and I think the fact that these companies are so willing to adapt to the situation is something that should be applauded. Oops, skipped ahead here. I think it's important to take time to recognize the importance of PPE. With all the shortages that we've experienced, we kind of generated this recognition of how important inventory levels are when they come to PPE. For your own personal sites and your company, you should take time to evaluate your normal levels of PPE based on your stable staffing requirements. And then you want to make sure that you have a small reserve available to account for changes in product availability. We've seen in some of the regular materials that we order upwards of 4 to 6 week lead times on replacement materials. So whether that be gloves or masks or sanitizers, disinfectants. So you want to make sure that your inventory levels are more reactive to that and be willing to order products in advance. In regards to cleaning practices and frequency, now is the time to evaluate your cleaning policies and practices, review your staffing needs or contracts for cleaning of common areas, pay careful attention to the types of cleaning agents that are being used to ensure proper sanitizing and disinfecting is taking place. If you have additional staff or contract changes and those aren't realistic for you at this time, look to your maintenance staff and your office staff to fill in with additional sanitizing efforts in their downtime. More on the silver linings, what things will stay the same. I'm hopeful that our willingness to change to address staff needs as well as the needs of our properties and our residents is something that remains, not only for the good of our industry, but as preparation for future events. Changes in prioritization of maintenance needs. I see there being a lasting impact on how we address service requests from this, and preparation of future events. There may not be another viral pandemic, but natural disasters, fires, floods, etc. are all a part of our industry that won't go away anytime soon, and we need to be flexible and willing to change during these challenging times. And something that I'd like you all to think about is how you as an individual will grow from this and how you think your company will grow. Moving forward with reopening strategies, we have not made any formal announcements of reopening dates yet. Our approach is to remain flexible and react to the continually changing situation. We're keeping lines of communication open, not only from our corporate office to site level staff, but with residents as well. And we have regular conference calls to address changes and updates as that information is released. We are continuing to work towards reducing the spread with continued efforts and continued use of PPE, sanitation efforts, and our plan for reopening amenity spaces is in the works. Most likely for us, that will include some kind of a soft open where either we control access, set scheduled use of spaces, and continue to promote social distancing, or we limit the number of people that are allowed in spaces at times. For us, our in-unit preventive maintenance and deferred maintenance will resume once we return to full open. And then lastly, I provided some links here. I believe Aubrey is going to make this presentation available to everyone, so you'll be able to download the document here so that you can click these links. But there are a ton of great tools that have been made available by the CDC. A workplace decision tool. This tool specifically kind of gives you a decision tree where you can go through and make the kind of determinations for what is best for reopening strategies for your company. There's a general COVID-19 frequently asked questions link, some CDC workplace cleaning information that has a lot of good resources available. And then lastly, one of the ones I think is most important is the worker safety and support tools. Ton of links there on what type of materials you can source for PPE, for sanitizers, for cleaning agents, and then good practices for making sure that your employees are staying safe and that you're giving them the support that they need during this time. That is all for me. Next up is Ryan Comer with Renovation Systems.
Good morning. Thank you, Michael. So I'm going to come at this from a service provider perspective. We not only provide services to the multifamily industry here in Minneapolis, but we also have an office in Fargo, North Dakota, and Des Moines, Iowa. We're going to use the guidelines that pertain to Minnesota. Our company has a division which responds to biohazard. So that's giving us an opportunity and an advantage when this first hit in March to be able to get prepared in a hurry, along with a lot of other interior services that are an integral part of operations. And we believe that we've got a strong responsibility to provide a safe, responsive crew that is coming out to address the needs of the properties. And I'm going to go into the specifics of what we've learned, the best practices that we've implemented, and some things that we're going to continue moving forward as far as new operating procedures. So when this first hit in early March, we turned to our mission statement, strive to innovate and bring fresh new ideas to an ever-changing marketplace. That's one sentence or one statement within our mission statement. And innovation is obviously a very key part in how you navigate through different times like this. And ever-changing marketplace couldn't be more true. Over the last 60 days, the plans have changed significantly as you've monitored both national, local news, CDC, local government. And I think it's important that we continue to be flexible as we learn more about how we move forward. Economic downturns in the past that didn't involve health and safety were singular. We were able to address that we were having an economic downturn and revenue would be reduced and you have to put a plan in place to operate your business. This particular time that we've gone through the last 60 days, we've not only had an economic downturn that we had to prepare our company for, which was set by the government to control the spread, which we understood, but we also had to do that in a very unique environment, and that was the health and safety of our people. So how do you recover a business when everyone is locked down and unavailable for face-to-face meetings? We would typically get our management team to the table and be able to address the issues at hand and be able to put our plan in place and move forward. So this was a very interesting time. The last 60 days still continues to be intriguing, but looking at the lessons learned, innovation was key. Also being agile, being fast and being quick. We've had plans to be able to address a reduction in revenue if the industry, when it does tighten up. We've lived through 2001 and 2002 and 2008, 2009, and those prompted us to build plans to be able to operate our business, still respond to our clients' needs, but manage our overhead expense. In this particular situation, we were able to get through Plan B pretty quickly and move into some newer plans, C and D. So the first things that we learned is you need to be quick, but understanding the situation that you're dealing with, so not reacting too fast. Once you develop your plan, implement your plan, and then be willing to maintain and revise your plan as you move forward. Obviously, working together to respond to our client needs, but doing more with less. The past 60 days have been what I would consider to be one of the quietest times, but yet the busiest times as we've moved forward. And we've found very interesting and innovative ways to be able to address those issues, which we'll go into in additional slides. Culture is a very important part of our business, and we think it's at the core of what we do. So not only are we addressing the health and safety pandemic, a reduction in revenue, but we also want to try to retain our culture. And we think it's very important that our team is aligned, that they're energized, they're ready to go out and respond to whatever needs are needed in the industry. And with the stay-at-home orders and the quarantine initiatives that have been put in place, limiting our employee in-person interaction certainly challenged our culture. And we wanted to be very sensitive to not only what was going on in their professional life, but also what's going on in their personal lives. And we all have some uncertainty as we've gotten through the last 60 days. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel, but it was important for us to be able to try to retain our culture, think about the people that are here and working for us and out there every day representing us, and find creative ways to keep our team positive and keep our company culture as upbeat as possible while working remotely. Communication is certainly the key of that, is constant communication, being very transparent with your team, keeping your team informed and aligned with all the new initiatives. Sometimes daily wasn't even enough. We wanted to make sure that our employees were fully aligned. And so through the use of telecommuting, using emails, text messages, phone calls went a long way, and really being able to hear the people that you're talking to directly and lift them up and reassure them that things are going to be all right, we're moving forward. And that certainly played a role in making sure that our team stayed intact and tight as we moved forward. We ramped up our IT equipment, and that was something that we did right away to be able to handle the video conferencing. And that's something that we'll continue to put a lot of effort at as we move forward. So communication was was certainly an essential part of navigating through this pandemic. Best practices that we worked through, number one, we considered mission critical was the safety of our people. We wanted to make sure that our employees were safe. We immediately moved into a lockdown mode where we allowed no guests, and that's very unusual. If you've been to our office, you know that we're very open and welcoming, but that was that ended March 16th. No kids, no outside guests, and very limited people attending or entering into our office. We pulled out community food and beverage. We provided additional cleaning and janitorial services throughout our facility, all high-touch areas, done daily, in some cases twice a day. And then we've added sanitizing stations as well. Our restoration team, not only are they're responding to biohazard throughout the course of the time we service the industry, but also now being trained specifically in the response for COVID-19. And that response has changed significantly from early March throughout the course of the last 60 to 70 days. The ongoing training continues to come in through the EPA, ICRC, and other service providers that specialize in biohazard response. Stocked up on PPE. I know Michael and Jeremy spoke to that specifically, and we did the same here. And we've got a fair amount of equipment and protective equipment in place and ready to go. We added Concrodium, which is a disinfectant, to all of our carpet cleaning vans. And we did that initially to be able to disinfect our vans as we're going out and providing a cleaning service in the multifamily industry. But while offering that, it was able to provide a disinfectant to the apartments that we're applying that product to as well. So not only are we cleaning our equipment, but we're also disinfecting the carpet that we're cleaning. And this was a simple product to add in and didn't cause any issues at all to soft goods or porous products like carpet, rugs, common areas, those kind of things. And the CDC and EPA approved. And that was an innovative ad that our carpet cleaning team put in that also provided some value to the industry. We've changed our operational protocol in the morning. We can have between 100 and 150 vans coming through our parking lot just in Minneapolis. And that used to be a bit of a free-for-all, first come, first serve. We've changed that with parking attendants, a very consistent and managed flow. We're not letting anybody out of their vehicles. We're loading their vehicles, as you can see in the image at the bottom. We're loading their equipment for the day, the materials for the day that they need. And at the same time, we are doing temperature checks of the driver and the occupants. We're limiting the number of people in each vehicle to a maximum of 2. And those crews will be stagnant. We will not be rotating people from crew to crew. We're providing them with masks, gloves, and sanitizer right then and there in the morning, every day, along with their paperwork and their essential materials that they need to go through the day. We're also asking the questions, the symptomatic questions, every single day of every person that comes to the office to ensure that we're being mindful and responsible for everybody that is coming here, loading up, and heading out to service properties throughout the Twin Cities and other markets. Our shipping and receiving, we changed this immediately. Any of our packages that come into our building from FedEx, UPS, Amazon, and that is a daily occurrence, those packages have been put into a 3-day quarantine, and they are dated and moved accordingly after 3 days. Prior to that, they are disinfected. So we're not taking packages for granted. Anything and everything that enters into our building or leaves our building, we're thinking about the potential spread of the virus, and we want to be doing our part to make sure that we're keeping our people safe as they flow through the building. Field staff and crew sizes, as I mentioned earlier, have been limited. And then scheduling of trades and units, and we're really working closely with our clients to avoid overlap. So not putting a floor covering and a cabinet installation crew in at the same time, trying to keep one trade in an apartment and still getting units renovated and turned in the time that's necessary to be able to get the new resident in, has created a bit of a challenge, but it is a silver lining as well. There's been a lot of efficiencies found in the things that I've listed above, but specifically of scheduling the trades. And we're also monitoring, logging the people that are in those apartments on a daily basis. We've never closed. We are an essential business and we continue to operate, but we did move to very limited staff in our building. We're going to continue that throughout the summer. We're not going to rush it. We have found a protocol that works where we can work remotely. We can keep people moving. We can respond to our clients' needs. We've found a lot of efficiencies throughout the operation. We remain cautious and will continue to follow the new procedures that we have put in place. We've limited our building. Our Minneapolis office is 60,000 square feet. It had 14 points of entry prior to the pandemic. We've limited that to 2. Everything else is secure. We have a doorman that's filling out a sign-in log, so any person that comes into our building has to check in. At that same time, temperature scan, health assessment questionnaire is done. And what that does is really we've put ourselves in a position where we've thought, if we have a COVID positive, what is our plan? And I think that's a really good way to think backwards from being in a situation, which fortunately we have not, but we think that it's a matter of time before the peak hits Minneapolis and Minnesota, and that we're going to be dealing with this as we go forward. So we want to be able to contain the flow, and we want to know who has interacted with who so that we can address those people immediately. And we think this is prudent and this is a responsible thing to do. So we're tracking that information, and it hasn't been met with much resistance. People understand that there are changes that we need to do to keep the health and safety in place. Employees will remain in their specific areas of the building. Again, this is a little bit of a challenge. We've had warehouse, office, all of our people used to commingle and interact, and we've changed that. We have a graphic that I think will pop up here. This is a graphic of what our building looked like before, and this is a graphic of what our building looks like now. So lots of people moving everywhere to limited amount of people contained in their area. So we've secured all of those points. So our restoration teams will respond into their warehouse space only. Our carpet cleaning will be in their warehouse, our enhancement team, and so on in the office staff. So there will be no spread throughout the building or overlap between office space as we move forward. Safety trumps culture, and that's something that we're going to continue to move forward with. We'll push for employee events. We think that's very important. If you have a positive person, they're going to go out and do a much better job. We're going to continue employee training. We are training in the other room right now virtually with 50 people on this protocol that we've just gone through in much more detail. It's a 7-page document that we've built internally, utilizing the CDC guidelines, EPA, and other businesses that have given us ideas on how we can do things. We think that remaining professional is very, very important. Company branded apparel now more than ever, as people are going to be wearing masks in all common areas. We want to represent the properties that have hired us to come out and provide a professional service. And we think that this is something that is important for residents as they're walking through their building to be able to identify a company branded individual, if it's a maintenance supervisor, if it's a service provider, if it's somebody that's out there offering those services, that a company branded shirt will go a long way, seeing how their faces are covered with masks. And we think moving forward that this is an important piece, that we all represent one reputation, which is the multifamily reputation in the Minnesota multifamily industry. If you're a service provider, if you're a multifamily operator, management company, maintenance supervisor, we're all looked at from the outside. And if we can do a very good job providing health and safety and professionalism, we believe that the future is very bright, and we're going to be continuing to do our part. We're very committed to it. And we're also open to any ideas and options that you guys may have thought of that you'd like us to consider. We're wide open for it. We've put together some EPA links that Aubrey will send out. There's a couple of points. One was fumigation. How important is fumigation? Is it as effective as scrubbing, cleaning, disinfecting? There's a lot of controversy back and forth on that. Our position is that if you're going to disinfect, cleaning is very important, actually scrubbing. The EPA has a position on it. If you're using a fogger, that all disinfectants are not built and designed to go into a fumigation or a fogger machine, that you need to make sure that it is EPA approved. There's also been questions that we've been posed on the suspense of particles. If somebody is COVID positive and they're in an apartment and they sneeze, does the HVAC system cause the spread of COVID? And the position on that is yes and no. One, a good filter in furnace systems, a strong HEPA filter, or some of the best filters that are out there are very tight, and they will help collect any particles flowing through. Probably the duct systems as well. But air circulation can spread aerosol-like droplets that certainly can spread the virus. So there's both positions on that, and I think it comes back to good common sense, good hygiene, and being able to use all the resources that we have available. So there's several good links. Michael referenced the EPA, the CDC has them, and NAA also provides a lot of good practices that are being used on a national level.
Great. Thank you to our panelists. We are at 11 o'clock and just slightly over, so I want to be cognizant of time today. And I was happy to see all the questions come in before our session today. We were able to address those questions in the presentation. So thank you again to our panel, Michael and Jeremy and Ryan. Great information. As all of them mentioned, we do have the handouts in the handout section of your webinar. We do have the PowerPoint presentation, which has the links to all the different links that were added to the presentation. So you should be able to get that there. And if not, please let me know and I can send that to you. I do want to thank our sponsors again for the ability to put this on at no cost to you. Arvig Multiwave, Coves and O'Connor, and Elliott's Painting and Decorating. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate your support of our programming. And we have a lot of other upcoming educational opportunities. They're listed here. We have a great webinar tomorrow on tree care. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up for that one. We have a great, the counterpart to this webinar is new best practices for management and leasing. And that is going to be next week on the 4th at 11 a.m. So if you are interested in that one, please register using GoToWebinar and more. So you can access any of our educational content on our website, calendar full of education opportunities and remote opportunities, so you can do them wherever you're working in this current moment. Thanks again to our panel. Thanks to everyone who is taking the time to attend this morning, and we hope to see you soon at upcoming educational programming. Thank you.